My wife has been peeking at me from around corners and behind furniture. It started a week ago. Just small things at first, the kind of stuff you brush off because your mind's too busy worrying about bills or work or how you forgot to take the trash out again. You think, that's odd, but whatever, and you move on. That's what I did anyway. It was Sunday night, and I was sitting in the living room flipping through channels, trying to find something to watch. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Lisa, my wife, was upstairs taking a shower. At least, I thought she was. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement, just a flicker, like someone ducking back behind the doorway to the kitchen. I turned my head, but there was no one there. My brain immediately chalked it up to shadows or a trick of the light. But then it happened again. This time I turned fast enough to catch it, the edge of Lisa's face peeking around the corner. Her eyes locked onto mine for just a second before she slipped back out of sight. "Lisa," I called out. My voice sounded unsure, even to me. There was no answer. I got up and walked to the kitchen. It was empty. I checked the back door, locked. Then I heard the sound of water running upstairs. The shower. Lisa was upstairs. My heart did a little tap dance in my chest, but I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe I'd caught a glimpse of my own reflection in the window. Maybe I was just tired. But it didn't stop there. The next morning, I was in the garage looking for a wrench. My car had been making a weird clicking noise, and I figured I'd take a look under the hood before work. I was rummaging through my toolbox when I felt it again, that sensation of being watched. You know the one where the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and you suddenly feel like you're not alone. I turned around, and there she was, Lisa, standing half hidden behind the door to the garage, just standing there, watching me. "Jesus, Lisa, you scared the hell out of me," I said, clutching my chest like some kind of sitcom dad. She didn't say anything, just smiled that small, tight-lipped smile of hers and stepped back into the house, closing the door softly behind her. I stood there for a minute, staring at the closed door. Something about the way she'd been standing, the way her eyes had looked, dark and unblinking, it made my skin crawl. When I went back inside, she was in the kitchen making coffee like nothing had happened. Over the next few days, it got worse. I'd catch glimpses of her peeking at me from around corners, behind the couch, even from outside the window once. And it wasn't just at home. One afternoon, I was at the grocery store picking up milk and bread, and I swore I saw her duck behind a shelf in the cereal aisle. But when I walked over, there was no one there. It was driving me crazy. "Lisa," I said one night after dinner. We were sitting at the table, the remains of spaghetti and garlic bread between us. "Have you been feeling okay lately?" She looked up from her plate. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" "I mean, have you been doing anything unusual?" Her brow furrowed. "Unusual? Like what?" I hesitated. I wanted to tell her about the peeking, about how she'd been acting strange, but something in her expression stopped me. It was the way she was looking at me, like she was trying to decide whether to be offended or amused. "Never mind," I said, forcing a laugh. "I've just been stressed, I guess. Probably imagining things." She smiled and reached across the table to pat my hand. "You need to relax, honey. Maybe take a day off work." Her hand was cold. By Friday, I was a wreck. I'd barely slept all week, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Those dark, unblinking eyes staring at me from the shadows. I started avoiding her, making excuses to stay late at work or run errands. But no matter where I went, I couldn't escape her. That night, I woke up to the sound of whispering. It was faint, almost too quiet to hear, but it was definitely coming from inside the house. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. Lisa wasn't in bed beside me. "Lisa," I called out. My voice sounded weak in the darkness. The whispering stopped. I got up and grabbed the baseball bat I kept under the bed. I don't know why I had it there. It wasn't like I'd ever played baseball, but at that moment, it felt like the only thing standing between me and whatever was lurking in the shadows. I crept down the hallway, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. The house was dark, but I could just make out a faint glow coming from the living room. As I got closer, I realized it was the TV, turned on but muted, casting flickering shadows across the walls. And there she was, Lisa, standing in the middle of the room, staring at the screen, her head tilted at an unnatural angle like a curious bird. Her reflection in the TV was distorted, stretched and twisted like something out of a funhouse mirror. "Lisa," I whispered. She turned to look at me, and for a moment I thought I was going to pass out. Her eyes weren't right. They were too wide, too dark, and there was something moving in them, like shadows writhing just beneath the surface. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice shaking. She didn't answer. She just smiled that tight, unsettling smile and took a step toward me. I stumbled back, almost dropping the bat. "Stay back," I said, my voice rising. "Lisa, stay back." She stopped, her head tilting again. Then she whispered, so softly I almost didn't hear it, "Why are you afraid of me?" I didn't know what to say. My mind was screaming at me to run, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. She took another step, and I finally found the strength to move. I turned and ran, not stopping until I was outside, standing barefoot in the freezing grass. I didn't have my phone, my wallet, or even my keys. I didn't care. I just needed to get away. The police didn't believe me, of course. They said there was no sign of anything unusual in the house. Lisa told them I'd been acting paranoid lately, that I'd been working too hard and not sleeping enough. She even cried a little, playing the concerned wife perfectly. When they left, she turned to me and smiled. "You need help, honey. Maybe we should talk to someone." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just stared at her, trying to figure out if the woman standing in front of me was still my wife or something else entirely. That was 3 days ago. I've been staying at a motel on the edge of town, trying to figure out what to do. I know I can't go back, but I also can't shake the feeling that she's still watching me. Sometimes, when I'm sitting in my room, I think I see her reflection in the TV screen, or hear her whispering my name from the other side of the door. Last night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside my room. I locked the door and wedged a chair under the handle, but it didn't make me feel any safer. I know she's out there, waiting for me to let my guard down. I don't know what she is or what she wants, but one thing's for sure. That's not my wife anymore, and I'm not sure it ever was. My wife has a removable face. It's not the kind of thing you'd notice right away. Lisa, yes, my wife's name is also Lisa, just like in the other story, funny coincidence, has always been beautiful, with her delicate features and her perfect smile. But now that I think about it, maybe that's the first clue I missed. Nobody's face is that perfect. It was my best friend, Mark, who first said something. We were having beers in the garage one Friday night, like we always did. Mark's one of those guys who's never been good at filtering his thoughts. He took a swig of his beer, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and said, "You ever notice how Lisa doesn't seem real sometimes?" I laughed it off. "What the hell does that mean?" He shrugged. "I don't know. She's just too perfect, you know? Like a mannequin or something. Creeps me out a little." I told him he was crazy, but his words stuck with me. Over the next few days, I started noticing little things. The way Lisa never seemed to sweat, even on the hottest days. How her makeup was always flawless, even when she wasn't wearing any. And then there was the way she moved. Smooth, almost mechanical, like her body was on a track. But the thing that really got me was her reflection. One night, we were brushing our teeth in the bathroom, and I caught her reflection in the mirror. For just a second, it looked wrong, like her face didn't quite fit her skull. I blinked, and it was gone, but the image stayed burned into my brain. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. But then Mark brought it up again. "You ever see Lisa take her face off?" he asked one night after a few too many beers. "What the hell are you talking about?" I said, my stomach twisting. He leaned in close, his breath reeking of alcohol. "I saw her do it last week when I came by to drop off that ladder. She didn't know I was there. I looked through the window and I saw her take it off like a mask." I laughed, but it sounded hollow. "You're drunk." "Maybe," he said, leaning back, "but I know what I saw." I couldn't get his words out of my head. That night, I lay in bed beside Lisa, staring at the ceiling, my heart racing. She was asleep, or at least pretending to be. Her breathing was too even, too measured. I turned my head to look at her, and for a moment, I thought I saw her face shift, like the skin was sliding over something underneath. I didn't sleep at all. The next day, I decided to test her. I came home early from work, parking down the street so she wouldn't hear the car. I crept up to the house and peered through the living room window. Lisa was sitting on the couch, her back to me. She was doing something with her hands, but I couldn't see what. I moved to a different window, trying to get a better angle. That's when I saw it. Her face was sitting on the coffee table. Not her real face, the mask. It was lying there, empty and lifeless, like a discarded piece of clothing. And Lisa was leaning forward, her hands moving over her real face. I couldn't see it clearly, but what I saw was enough. Dark, mottled skin stretched tight over a bony structure that didn't look human. Her eyes were sunken pits, and her mouth, God, her mouth was too wide, filled with teeth that looked like they'd been filed to points. I must have made a sound, because she suddenly froze. Her head snapped toward the window, and I ducked out of sight, my heart hammering in my chest. I stayed there for what felt like hours, too scared to move. When I finally worked up the courage to look again, the mask was back on, and Lisa was sitting on the couch, smiling like nothing had happened. I didn't confront her. How could I? What the hell do you even say in a situation like that? "Hey, honey, why do you wear a fake face?" No, I kept quiet and tried to act normal, but every moment I spent in that house felt like a lifetime. Mark called me the next day. "You believe me now?" he asked. I didn't answer. "Listen," he said, his voice low. "You need to get out of there. Whatever she is, it's not safe. You hear me? You need to leave." But I couldn't leave. Not yet. I needed to know the truth. That night, I set up a camera in the living room. I told Lisa I was going out to meet Mark, but instead, I parked down the street and waited. At midnight, I crept back to the house and retrieved the camera. The footage was worse than I could have imagined. It started with Lisa sitting on the couch, just like before. She reached up and pulled at the edges of her face, peeling it off in one smooth motion. But this time, she didn't stop there. She stood up, her body jerking unnaturally, and walked to the mirror. She stared at herself for a long time, her bony hands tracing the edges of her grotesque face. Then she turned and looked directly at the camera. "Why are you watching me?" she whispered. Her voice was distorted, like it was coming from underwater. The screen went black. I don't know how she knew about the camera. Maybe she'd always known. Maybe she'd been playing with me from the start. All I know is that I can't stay here anymore. Mark's coming over tonight to help me pack. He doesn't think it's a good idea, but I told him I needed to confront her, to get some kind of closure. He said he'd back me up, no matter what. I hear a car pulling into the driveway. That must be him. It's been an hour since Mark arrived, and I haven't seen him. I heard him knock on the door, heard Lisa let him in. Then nothing. No voices, no footsteps, just silence. I'm sitting in my car now, staring at the house. The lights are on, and through the living room window, I can see Lisa sitting on the couch. She's smiling. Mark's face is sitting on the coffee table. The silent watchers. I didn't notice it at first. The little things are always easy to brush off. A mug in the wrong place, a faint creak in the middle of the night, a light flickering for no reason. But hindsight makes everything clear. It wasn't just my imagination. I should have realized sooner. It started with my phone. I was scrolling through it one night when the screen froze. That wasn't unusual. It happened sometimes. What was unusual was when it unfroze. A video started playing. It was a recording of my living room from a high angle, like a security camera. But I didn't have any security cameras. I paused, staring at the screen. It was a live feed. The timestamp at the bottom matched the time on my phone. The angle was unfamiliar, but the subject wasn't. It was me, sitting on the sofa, holding my phone, staring at the screen. I turned the phone off and tossed it across the room. My hand shook as I tried to think of a rational explanation. Maybe it was a prank, some kind of glitch. But the idea felt hollow. My flat felt too quiet, the shadows too deep. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I found the first camera. It was tucked behind the bookshelf, its tiny black lens barely visible. I stared at it for what felt like an eternity before I plucked it from its hiding spot. My fingers were trembling so badly I almost dropped it. I tore through my flat, searching every corner. By the time I was done, I'd found 6 cameras. In the vents, behind the bathroom mirror, even one embedded in a light fixture. Each discovery tightened the knot of dread in my stomach. Someone had been watching me, recording me, living my life through their lenses. I called the police. They took the cameras, asked some questions, and promised to investigate. They didn't seem to take it seriously. One of them suggested it was leftover equipment from a previous tenant. The other just nodded and handed me a card with a phone number to call if I found anything else. That night, I heard footsteps, faint, deliberate, and too close. They stopped just outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, staring at the sliver of light beneath the door. The shadows shifted, but when I finally worked up the courage to check, there was no one there. The next day, things got worse. My laptop was behaving strangely, windows opening and closing on their own. My webcam light flicked on briefly before going dark again. Then a video played. This time it was a recording of me in the shower. My knees buckled, and I clutched the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. The timestamp showed it was recorded that morning. I tried to delete it, but the file wouldn't go away. My phone vibrated. A message popped up on the screen. "Don't delete that. We like it." My blood ran cold. I threw the laptop across the room. The screen shattered, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. They were in my devices. They could see me, hear me, everywhere I went. I stopped going to work, stopped leaving the house. I taped over every camera, turned off every electronic device, but it didn't help. My phone would still light up in the middle of the night, showing me images of myself, sleeping. Sometimes the photos were taken from angles that didn't make sense, angles that shouldn't have been possible. I got rid of my phone. I smashed my laptop, my television, even the microwave. I thought I could cut them out, sever the connection, but they always found a way back in. One night, I woke up to the sound of a voice. It was coming from my tablet, which I was sure I'd thrown away. The screen glowed softly in the dark. A man's voice, calm and amused, said, "You can't hide from us." I smashed the tablet too, but I knew it wouldn't matter. I tried moving. I packed my things and left the flat. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I bought a new phone, but the first time I turned it on, a message appeared on the screen. "You can't escape." I didn't even unpack. I sat on the floor of my new flat, staring at the walls, trying to understand how they always knew. The cameras reappeared, not just in the flat, but in my car, in hotel rooms, in public bathrooms. I'd look up and see a glint of light, a tiny lens watching me. I smashed them when I found them, but more always took their place. Now I live in constant fear. Every device is a threat. Every reflection feels like an accusation. Every time I close my eyes, I imagine them watching me, their eyes fixed on me through countless hidden lenses. I don't know what they want. Maybe they don't want anything. Maybe the watching is the point. Last night, I found a camera inside my pillow. I threw it away. But this morning, a new one was sitting on the kitchen counter next to a note. The handwriting was neat, almost cheerful. It said, "It's not the cameras, it's us." I don't know what that means. I don't want to know. But the walls feel like they're closing in, and the shadows seem darker every night. No matter where I go, no matter what I do, I can feel them watching.